Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to Pride Therapy, where today I will be discussing common myths about transgender people. And I'm going to be showing you some really interesting clips, some video clips, so please stay tuned. And if you're wondering what makes me qualified to talk about this issue, well, I would love to tell you. I've been working with transgender adults for about 10 years now. I've attended numerous workshops and conferences. I've taken lots of CE classes. I read as much as I possibly can on the topic. I keep up with all of the relevant research. I listen to all trans stories, even those who are detransitioning, because I can definitely learn from them too. Let's see, I also waited in a really long line for an hour once to see Laverne Cox speak in my hometown, and it was amazing. And I agree, though, that doesn't in itself make me qualified to talk about trans issues. But most importantly, I've been listening to the stories of my transgender clients for a decade now. I've heard hundreds of stories firsthand. I know the real way to get to know a specific minority group is just to listen to them, and then listen some more, and then believe what they say. So before I forget, my name is Katie. I've been a licensed therapist for 20 years. Please go ahead and subscribe to my channel. So here's what I've seen to be the top 4 misconceptions about transgender people. Number 1 is the misconception that trans women commit crimes in restrooms or that they're dangerous. Now, one of the most damaging myths is that trans women pose a threat in women's restrooms. However, the facts actually tell a different story. So while there's no empirical evidence to indicate that trans people pose any kind of threat to cisgender people in public bathrooms, the reverse is actually true. Transgender people are routinely harassed and even assaulted by cis people in these settings. And I'll leave links to these studies in the description of this video. Also, I want to add that I love a good, healthy debate where there's no name calling and no hostility. It seems like gone are the days of healthy discourse. A healthy debate is where two people are open to others' perspectives and respect each other even if they don't agree. And there are a few YouTube channels now where they do have people from opposing sides of arguments discussing this topic. So one of these channels is called Jubilee, and I'll show you a brief clip of this debate.
Yeah, her concern is the possibility of predation, and that's still a possibility. It doesn't matter if trans people are using the restroom or not. Sure. But what you're concerned about is that you're possibly that people feel more emboldened to put on women's clothes and go in the bathroom, but they're still violating the law all over the place if that's the purpose that they're going in for.
As you can see, this one trans woman is acknowledging that women's main concern is primarily predators in the restrooms. So her concern is that predatory cis men would dress as women and claim they are trans just to be able to victimize women in restrooms. While that is a valid concern, should that prevent trans women from being able to use the women's restroom, as they have been doing already for decades and decades before this became a problem that it never was before? Also, I'm not sure that cis men dress as women to assault women in restrooms. I would think that if a man wants to attack a woman, he's probably not going to bother to dress as a woman beforehand, but I can honestly say that I don't know much about that type of crime. I'm sure it's happened at some point, but I don't think it's common, but I could definitely be wrong about that. Number 2 is that being transgender is a new fad. Now, most people are completely unaware that transgender people have been documented across different cultures for centuries. They've been recognized in the Hijra community in South Asia, and they've been called the third gender. So in Bangladesh, they formed their own communities in order to stay safe. Here's a brief clip of one of the Hijra communities where around 250 trans women live.
Bobby, a 60-year-old Hijra, is the leader here.
So, Bobby, this is your family. This is your sisters. How many sisters do you have?
Yes.
How many?
About
200 and 250, and you remember everyone? Everyone.
In India and Bangladesh, it's believed that Hijra worship the Bahuchara or Mataki, one form of Uma. the Hindu goddess, giving them a special ability to curse and bless people.
Now, this documentary about the transgender community in Bangladesh is fascinating, and I'll leave a link for you to watch this if you want to learn more about this culture. So in other cultures like Native American culture, they're referred to as the Two-Spirit people. And here is a clip from Inquiry describing what Two-Spirit means in some of the Native American cultures.
To illustrate the diversity of meanings that Two-Spirit contains, consider the following. In Lakota, the word winkte means to be as a woman and refers to two-souled Lakota people who transgress boundaries of gender from what may be considered male to female. In Dene, nadlehe means those who transform and refers to one of four separate genders: masculine feminine, masculine masculine, feminine masculine, and feminine feminine. Each gender has its own word in the Dene language. And those are just two nation-specific examples. There are so many more. Each nation's understanding of gender and sexual diversity is different and grounded in specific spiritual beliefs. Although all nations don't have a concept of Two-Spirit people, across those indigenous nations that do, Two-Spirit people were historically held in high regard and often considered sacred or divine, holding important positions like matchmakers, medicine people, or warriors on the front lines of battle.
Ancient civilizations from Rome to India have records and art depicting transgender individuals, proving that transgender identities have been recognized and respected for millennia. But just to clarify, I am very aware that more youth are identifying as trans or non-binary. In fact, it's twice as many than previously thought. So this has become a very divisive topic. And while trans adults make up less than 1% of the population, just over 1% of youth under 18 are identifying as trans or non-binary. And although I don't work with clients under age 18, I'm following this issue to see what these numbers mean. It could mean that youth now have the language to describe what they have been feeling and now feel more confident as coming out as trans. And I have watched the detransition stories of some of the youth who did medical transitions, and they now regret those decisions, and I have a lot of empathy for them. Like most issues, more research is needed, but let's keep in mind that trans youth face massive amounts of discrimination and bullying, and we don't want to make it any worse for them. So keep in mind, as I've said before, that trans people have always been among us for centuries, and let's not demonize them. The third myth is that transgender people are mentally ill. So being transgender is not a mental illness, just like being gay is not a mental illness. But people who are transgender can face unique challenges such as gender dysphoria and discrimination, which can affect their mental health. So some trans individuals don't experience mental health issues at all. Others have mental health issues that aren't related to being transgender, but for some, mental health and gender identity are related. So generally, this isn't due to being transgender, but due to the social stigma that often exists. For instance, about half of all transgender adults report being verbally harassed in the past year. So if you're a person being verbally harassed at work, then having to constantly worry about your own safety in restrooms or just walking down the street, then chances are pretty high that you could have a diagnosis of anxiety or depression, because constantly being harassed or bullied does cause anxiety and depression. Most trans adults I meet with don't seem confused at all about their gender. They're very aware of who they are. They're just usually questioning whether or not they should do anything about it. Once an adult client comes to me for support, they've been coming to terms with this for themselves for years and years, sometimes decades, keeping it a secret from everyone. So if you're an opponent of trans rights or the trans experience, then I urge you to talk to transgender people and listen to their experiences. Just ask questions and listen. I find that a lot of people who are so adamantly against trans rights don't personally know any trans people or have any trans friends. So it's human nature for us to fear things that are different from us and things we have no personal connection with. And I'm guilty of this too. I used to believe all sorts of stereotypes as a teenager, stereotypes about trans people, gay people, Muslims, Asian people, and pretty much any minority group until I actually met them in person and got to know them. And now that I know better, I do better. Myth number 4 is that a lot of people end up detransitioning. While it's definitely true that some people end up detransitioning for many different reasons, it's rare for people to detransition. Most of the reasons that people have for detransition are due to external factors such as pressure from family, discrimination, harassment, unwelcoming school environments, and increased difficulty in getting a job. I find it very important to listen to these stories of people who detransition to hear what barriers they faced. And I feel like it's my job as a therapist to inform my clients about barriers they will face so they can make informed decisions. And I can only speak for my clients by saying that none of them have transitioned thinking it's going to make their lives easier or that it's going to solve all of their problems. So I just help my clients weigh the pros and the cons of transitioning and help them to make an informed decision. In fact, most of them are very aware that the transition process will be very difficult and that there can be negative side effects, but they feel it's necessary in order to live more authentically. I also want to add that for some, transition is a journey that doesn't have a clear destination. It seems that most people think there's this linear path with transitioning where you start at point A and you end up at point B, but it's usually not that simple. And I always tell my clients that everyone's transition looks different. I've had some clients who will choose to use HRT but never socially transition. And then some will socially transition but never have any medical interventions at all. It just looks different for each person, and it's a very personal decision. So there you have it. This ends my list of common myths about transgender people. I hope it's been helpful for you. I'm urging you to keep in mind that trans people, like all of us, are seeking acceptance, love, and the right to just live authentically. So trans people are some of my favorite people in the world. They are some of the most insightful and self-realized clients I've ever worked with. So when my friends and family ask me why I choose to work with trans people, I just say because they're so awesome. And let's remember that love is the most potent tool we possess. And if you're a person who calls yourself a Christian, then keep in mind that in our world, trans people would be considered the least of these. And you know what the Bible says about the least of these, right? And Black trans women especially are probably the most marginalized group in our country. So let's embrace them and love them. Thank you so much for watching. Please go ahead and subscribe, and I will see you next time.